Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
And good morning to our panelists. So I'm just going to start the panel by mentioning that yesterday we thought we were tight on space at the table that was set up, and today we are lucky enough to be a little bit squashed up here, which I think just shows that we have such an amazing panel today of dedicated people who I think are going to help us have a really great discussion. So thank you, panelists, for being willing to be so close to each other and so cramped. And if anyone gets claustrophobic, please feel free to stand up and run around if you need to. And if you can't see or hear anybody, let us know. The other thing is that we have the microphone that we were running around yesterday, we have up here, so that this half of the panel can use this microphone. Hopefully that half of the panel can use the other microphone. But what that means is that when we open it up to questions from you all, we won't have a microphone out there. So what I'm going to ask the panelists to do is repeat the question that you're answering to help us out, so that will get caught on video. So the structure, I think, of what we're going to do this morning, I'm not going to go through and kind of do dry introductions. Some of the folks on the panel you all know from yesterday, and I think it will be much more meaningful for each person to introduce themselves, and a couple folks have some slides and a little bit more storytelling to do at the beginning, and then I'm going to come up and offer some questions to the panel. The panel may actually even have some questions for each other, and then we'll open it up to you all for questions, Q&A, and hopefully some open discussion. So we'll start the panel off with Dr. Mike Brennan.
I'm just going to make some real brief comments about what the consortium, my title is representing the Department of Health and Human Services. I think I'm not really officially appointed, but I like Huntersville and the patients so much that I can't stop. So I don't have an official title, but I have been involved in the project to assess the population and be sensitive to the patients and their families. In rebooting, Dr. Madron, who you listened to yesterday, is our principal physician, ophthalmic oncologist, who's sort of got that guiding hand. The epidemiologist from Mecklenburg County knows most all the patients and has for a long time, and she's been very helpful. She provides a steadying influence in epidemiologic principles, but she's very invested in the population. So our reboot is to conclude the genome sequencing and see if there is anything that is uncovered, as you listened to yesterday, that might lead us to an environmental or an occupational trigger that might have bearing on these, in fact, maybe both of these populations. We're certainly going to revisit the state tumor registry and get more active with governmental officials, not just here, but across the country, Alabama as well. There are several Senate bills before the North Carolina legislature that could certainly advance our cause. One seems to be limited to the Huntersville population, and another one is a little broader because it would include another county that has a higher incidence of thyroid cancer. So the intent of the second bill is more expansive, and it is Senate Bill 297. It's very broad, and it requires that a collaboratory at UNC appoint a panel that is broad and diverse in background, in composition, and in experience in dealing with both the environmental side as well as the medical side of the issue. And I think that'll be that is going to bring some new minds into the picture. We're certainly going to maintain collaboration with our Auburn colleagues because the issue is the same. The populations are quite similar, and I think that there'll be some potential answers from their parallel study. I like the idea of holding contact with our international colleagues, OcuMel, thanks to Nigel and his friends, for bringing their interest and their leadership in forming a broader coalition that might find answers abroad. So finally, I'd say we're certainly going to maintain close connections with Cure-OM. I still believe that this is the strongest patient-centric foundation for uveal melanoma, ocular melanoma, and we value this friendship. So I'll stop and be ready to answer some questions later.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. I think that's a good sort of segue, and I just wanted to provide a little additional framing for today's panel, different from yesterday's panel. I think most of you, if not all of you, were here for yesterday's panel as well. And I think today's panel, what we're hoping to do is take everything that we discussed yesterday, kind of the context Dr. Brennan just set up for us, and kind of take a little bit more of a humanistic approach, if you will, to it, and really kind of understand a little bit more about I think it's fair to say kind of the lives and experiences of all of you who have been going through this. And I think each person on this panel represents a different piece of that puzzle, and is bringing something unique to the advocacy and to the science component, but also are living their lives. And so how do all these different components intersect? And so we'll continue going down with introductions. And feel free to use the microphones there if you want.
I don't have any slides today. I think everyone knows Marlana Orloff, medical oncologist, here at the table. Thank you.
And I'm Fred Cam. I'm kind of helping co-lead the Auburn experience. It's a rough day to be an Auburn Tiger, but I'm proud to be an Auburn Tiger. Not going to change my affiliations.
Hello, I'm Jessica Boesmiller, and I am part of the Huntersville unique population. A couple people yesterday I got to meet, and they said, "Oh, you're the one." And if you don't know what that means, great. We kind of got some notoriety through my cancer diagnosis, being in a unique population, having so many people already in our community. And I was one of those ones that had heard about the story and had just thought, oh, that's sad. And then when I was 31 weeks pregnant with twins, I got to be that one that said, I have what? Cancer? What? My story in quick numbers, one husband, amazing Mark Boesmiller, 2 kids, 1 dog, but 1 incomplete family. We decided to have 2 more. We thought would be 1 more, but God said you make babies and twins. So these are my beautiful twins. 31 weeks we were at diagnosis. 32 weeks I got to meet with Dr. Mattern at Duke. 34 weeks pregnant, I had enucleation in my right eye. 37 weeks, I had delivery of twins. And it took 2 days for the pathology of the placentas to come back clear, that the babies had not had any transference of those cancer cells, which was really a blessing. 9 more days before I could get a scan to tell me that my class 2 tumor was not throughout the rest of my body, so that was really good news. And throughout my journey, everyone's tagging Sue and, tagging Ashley as soon as that came up. When Ashley's story came so public as well in Auburn, it was tagging Jessica in every article because they're like, oh, wow, you too. And that becomes kind of crazy. But my story is about more than numbers, and the faith, family, and community that came out of my diagnosis is what I focus on. It was 2 weeks before my diagnosis that I learned what an ocularist was. And you guys remember that first time you learned what an ocularist was? And for those of you who have not had a enucleation, you probably still don't know what that is, but that's the guy who makes our prosthetic eyes. And I had never even considered what that person was or how that process happened, but I sat and watched a 10-minute video. And for those of you on Facebook that just scroll, that was me the fact that I actually sat there and watched a 10-minute video was divine, complete divine intervention that when I saw it on the fellow's computer screen before they told me what it was, but when I read it, that was the recommended treatment plan, I knew what that word meant, enucleation, and I knew that was okay, that I was still going to look normal. And because of that divine video that I got 2 weeks prior to my diagnosis. And one day after my diagnosis, my church just happened to have a healing mass that my mom and I could go to and cry through. But it's been our faith and our family support and our community, the community that began through the work that Sue and Kenny had through Keenan and Summer and Janie and other patients of the Huntersville unique population, has started this rallying of community support, and I got to just come in on the tail end of it and really feel that warmth and love in our community because it was already there. We already had people in Huntersville and Cornelius and Davidson, really, really mad about what was happening and asking for answers. And so I got to, join in on that, and I did say yes. So when Casey at Lake Norman Publications initially asked me for an interview, the first response was, no, we got a lot going on here. We don't need all that. But we prayed about it, and we said yes. We said yes because that was all that I could do. I have 4 kids. I can't, who can really, be the advocate that we all need as patients when you have such a family and you do want to give your, whatever time you have left to the family. So I said yes to interviews just because that was all that I could do. We didn't have money, still don't have money. We said, we'll say yes to the interviews because that's easy. And it became a very surreal experience that we were in People magazine and Cosmopolitan magazine, and my husband's best man who lives in Montana, his high school daughter was approached. Oh, did you hear about this story of this pregnant mom with twins? And she's going, yeah, that's my dad's best friend's wife. We saw it translated in Vietnamese, and it was a story in Australia, and the national attention that this got was very surreal. But needed for our community and to get some traction for some more people to start looking into things and to start really keeping it to the awareness of everyone and talking about it so it doesn't just die. So if it was helpful, I'm glad it was to say yes, but it was the community that we've had through this unique population that has supported me through my cancer journey. There's a lot of physical trauma that happens with this, for whatever treatment you have, whether it's enucleation or radiation. But the mental trauma that happens afterwards is what you have to really focus on to heal. And for me, I've said the irony is that I'm the healthy living director at the local YMCA, and the healthy living director got cancer. So, but it was through programs like Live Strong at the YMCA that I further developed my community support to help heal, through yoga classes that I was able to learn how to meditate and really help myself, deal with all the mental crap that you have to wade through when you have cancer. If you went to the panel yesterday, living how do you say no to other things that, you just need to say yes to yourself by saying no to other stuff. And I also got to go on a young adults cancer retreat called First Descents. And that was, I just barely qualified. There's 39 and under young adult so, just barely. And but I did go whitewater rafting, or not rafting, whitewater kayaking, and that was amazing. To spend a week away from my beautiful babies and from my husband, where I could just focus on myself and remember, that there is more to me than a cancer diagnosis. There's more to me than being part of a cluster, unique population. And that's what I want to say to all you. When I thought about this, I've done talks for Live Strong. I've done talks for the Y and in my community. But, this is a wonderful experience, being able to talk to other patients and other caregivers and medical, people. And what I really want to say is thank you. Thank you to the advocates that allow me to take care of my family. And thank you so much for keeping it going to get some answers. So that's me. I'm going to turn this off.
Okay, I'm not going to show all my slides. I just want to show something kind of in the very beginning of this. For those of you who are not here Friday night, I'm Ashley McCrary, and I live in Auburn, Alabama. And just wanted to show a couple things and just give a little perspective again to those people who weren't here Friday night. This is my sweet family. Like Jessica, I'm a mother of 4. I don't know, maybe we need to look at if that is like something that brings us all together. How many mothers of 4 do we have out there? But I was diagnosed when I was 42 years old. I lived in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, but I went to Auburn 88 to 92 after graduating. I lived in Greenville, South Carolina for a year, then Birmingham for a while, almost 13 years, and then we moved to Memphis. And after being in Memphis, as my story is told, I had gone to the beach with some friends and had a friend of mine that noticed this black spot on my eye. So if y'all didn't see this, this is what my eye looked like. And remarkably, I worked in a hospital. I worked around cancer doctors. Of course, my husband, who, as some of you know, called me Sweet Eyes my whole time I've ever known him, had not noticed it. My family, sisters, who I'd just been with 2 weeks prior to this, nobody had seen it. If you were to go back and look at pictures of me 6 months prior, you could see it. And so the fact that this friend of mine noticed it and said something to me, I carry this picture on my phone because people ask me all the time, how did you know? And I'll say, well, let me show you. Because I tell people, if you see something like this in somebody's eye, say something. Just ask a question. It's not going to offend anybody. At least it didn't offend me. It saved my life. I can't tell you how many doctors have said, whoever told you that saved your life. As y'all know my story, I came home, a month goes by, I'm at a dinner with some oncologists, and one of the oncologist's wives said, what's that on your eye? Let my husband look at it. And that's what got me into an optometrist, who got me into an ophthalmologist, who got me into an ocular oncologist. This is a Reader's Digest version of my story. But I saw Dr. Matt Wilson in Memphis, Tennessee, and he's who diagnosed me. I got a second opinion with Dr. Grosnaclass. I only toss names out in case anybody out there has seen these doctors. It's always kind of fun to know other people who've seen Dr. G and who agreed that I needed to have my right eye enucleated. So let me see so this is me right after enucleation. And as I tell people, that's a tricky time. Like Jessica said, there's a lot of trauma that goes on with it. I have a beautiful prosthetic eye. I love this is me with a patch, me with my son who's now a junior at Auburn. I like to tell people I had a lot of fun with my patches. I blinged them out. I had to put monograms on them. I liked your St. Patrick's Day one. But anyway, to have the patch and to wear it is a tricky thing because when you go someplace, you have no anonymity. And so for me, I appreciated what I call the gift of normalcy. This is my ocularist here. I told y'all he reminded me of Captain Kangaroo, and some of you in this room don't know who Captain Kangaroo is. You're not 39 and younger. But I grew up watching Captain Kangaroo, so I love this man. But I'll tell you, it was a very surreal experience. And I saw on Jessica's pictures, it was kind of like this. I expected when I went in to get my eye done, this very sterile medical type of place. And it's not like that at all. He had what do they call them? Hole punches from Hobby Lobby, all different sizes that would hole punch what your pupil was. He had, like I said, coffee stains down his shirt. He was just the cutest little fella. But there was nothing sterile, is my point in bringing this up. It was just kind of funny. And he told me, he said, I get to copy what the God of the universe put in you and hand paint this to look just like your other eye. And I want to get it right. I think Jessica and I were talking, you went back 3 times? Yeah, I went back 3 times just to get it right, and he was very happy to do so. As a matter of fact, midway through the day, he paints it, and then he puts acrylic on, and then he puts it in this pot that's like seals it, I guess, I don't know. And then you layer it, like layer paint and layer things on there so it comes out to look the way it does. But part of what you get to do is you put little veins on there, and the veins are needlepoint thread. And midway through the day, he ran out of needlepoint thread and had to get somebody to run up to Target to get the needlepoint thread to put on my eye. It was very fun. I had a friend that got to put veins on there. My husband got to put some on there, and so it was a group effort to get this. Cute picture. My husband decided to cover a holly tree with the eyeball. And that's what that is. And then I had people in my community come by and write on my cancer-free New Eye Day. And I was just very, very well supported in my community. And then just very quickly about how I got involved in the Auburn group. Because I share this part of the story going, I won't go into all of it, but I don't think it's by chance that I ended back in Auburn when I did. I mean, obviously, I don't mind speaking in front of people, and I do believe the Lord's blessed me with a gift of administration and being able to spin 20,000 plates at one time and not get too overwhelmed. But this was not something I was planning on, for sure. Those of you who don't know the story, in February 2 years ago, I got a Facebook message from a friend of Mark McWilliams, and Mark sadly passed away at the age of 42 because of metastasis of ocular melanoma. He was in architecture school at Auburn when I was there. And so anyway, he had a friend that asked me if I would do this Facebook Blitz to see if there was anybody else who had this cancer, and that's how I got involved in this. So we did this Facebook Blitz. We sent out a picture of my eye. There was 3 of us, Julie and Allison. Both of them I knew. When I got my diagnosis, like many of you in this room, you didn't know anyone that you could call on. I had 2 friends who I was very good friends with while I was at Auburn. Julie, who's on the far end, she was a sorority sister of mine. We lived in the same dorm. She was a year younger than me. Allison and I had the same circle of friends, and we were friends at Auburn. We didn't hang out a lot, so all of the misconceptions that we lived together and whatnot, those weren't necessarily true. But we did know in each other well enough that when I was diagnosed, I was able to call both of them. And had them to be able to feed into my life, which was a huge blessing. But they helped me do this Facebook Blitz, and it was shared over 2,500 times, and that's how we started getting to know about these people who went to Auburn. Our Facebook page is called the Auburn Ocular Melanoma Facebook page, and there's nothing special to it. It was designed to communicate with what I thought was going to be 24 to 36 people, but we have 6,800 people who follow that page now, which is insane. And what that translated to in my life was something I didn't expect. And I did an interview right before I came in here today, and they asked me, what has Cure OM meant to you? And I said, I did not sign up for this job. Like, I was asked to do a Facebook post, okay? And I did. And I was asked to communicate to be able to get these people in front of Dr. Orloff and her team when they came, and I did that. But then all of a sudden, the responsibility of answering questions, like people would send me messages, where did you live, and maybe I should move my child out of the dorm at Auburn, or I would have people ask me questions about that they had a different type of cancer, and do you think that whatever we're going through affected them? And people would send me messages about, well, I live in this really small town in Georgia, and there's not an oncologist or an ocularist or a whatever here. Who should I go see? And I signed up to give information to get them in front of Dr. Orloff. I didn't know how to do this. And so for me, I'd say, I don't have the answers, but I'm a good connector. And what Cure OM did for me was give me the ability to say, I don't have the answer who you should see, but they've got this on their website. Or there's not a support group here, but they have support groups that are online. Or I don't know about clinical trials, but they have a whole page for it. And so I've been a good connector, I feel like, with the information that's been given. Fast forward, and we were charged with coming up with the research money and to actually help assemble a team of people who would do the research in Auburn. And that is hard. I have a full-time job and 4 kids, and involved in other things. And I also want to pay attention to my husband, who I absolutely adore. And it can be tricky from a time management standpoint. I will tell you that. And it's hard because Allison, in this picture, she is not doing well right now. We're praying on her behalf that would change. But she was sent home this week with no options for treatment for her, and so that's very hard for us. Lori, who's on the very end over here, came into our group a little bit later, and she's in Philadelphia now, literally as we speak. She went through different trials, Delcath trials, had chemo, immunoembolization, and I can't even say all the other things she's had, but she's had 3 new spots come up, so she's going through treatment now. And for us to be going through treatment and going through lives and asked to also be responsible for raising $240,000 is very heavy. I'm not going to lie. It's very heavy, and the responsibility of it is scary for me. I don't want to let anybody down. And so it's a huge challenge, is what I'd like to tell people. If anybody feels compelled to write a check today, you can meet me right outside, because that would be great. I've done things like met with the governor's office. I've met with university officials. I've taken a lot of criticism living in the city of Auburn. I have 2 kids that are going to be at Auburn, so people are like, how can you send your child to Auburn, and yet you think this could be an issue? There's some real big challenges to it, but at the same time, gosh, the hope and encouragement that I have being an advocate for this group is all the payback I need. I do feel like in my lifetime that we're going to figure out potentially something that does link us together. And I'm one of those who, a lot like Sarah and other people, I believe that if we can find a cause, we may not find that cure right then, but we may find a way to treat something that could help. So I think what we're doing in Auburn is going to actually help globally be able to come up with something that will impact and help with the advancement of ocular melanoma. So that's all I have today. I just knew there were people who didn't know our whole story, and just wanted to share it with you today. And I appreciate, I don't know, Friday night I shared a story, this is crazy, about the person who found out about us because, real quickly, we were CBS This Morning, NBC Nightly News, and Today's Show. We did People Magazine and Dr. Oz. And after Dr. Oz, Tony Martin and his sweet wife Paige, who are here, I'll wave to them. He is the story I was telling the other night, that they were, on the Facebook page and saw it. And I said, if we're doing this and only one person can find out and one person can be encouraged, then we've done it for a good reason. And Tony is that reason, because he saw our page and saw stuff. Went in and was diagnosed, sadly, with ocular melanoma. Was in architecture school as well at Auburn. A little before me, I'll say that. A little old. His birthday was yesterday. I won't say that he was 52, but he was. And sadly, we wanted the win from Auburn for him for his birthday, and we did not get that, but War Eagle anyway. So anyway, I think what we're doing is making a difference, because it changed the life of Tony, and that's worth it for me. So thank y'all so much.
I'm Kenny Colbert, and this is my wife, Sue. We've been living in Huntersville for 25 years. We've met several of y'all before, so thank you for having us here again. And we want to talk a little bit about our story with our daughter, Keenan. We were kind of some of the early people in Huntersville on ocular melanoma, where Jessica's kind of coming in on the later end of this. Keenan developed a blog after she was diagnosed with OEM, so we're going to make some quotes from her blog that came up there. But in February of 2009, she was diagnosed with ocular melanoma. Number one, she was 23 years old, so it was very traumatic for that to happen at that point. We'd never heard of ocular melanoma, knew nothing about it. What made it even more traumatic for our family was Keenan was engaged to be married, and she was going to be married in June. So this was in February, and she had a big wedding planned. When she was diagnosed, we immediately came to Duke, and Dr. M met with her, and he said, your tumor is so large, really, I would recommend enucleation. So this moved quickly. So she was diagnosed in Charleston 1 week, met Dr. M the next week, had enucleation the next week. So this moved very, very quickly. And then you can see that her wedding pictures there from June of 2009. She was married to Billy Cole, the love of her life. And Billy was there for every doctor's appointment. Everywhere she went, he was there. We're still in close contact with Billy. We see him on a very regular basis. We talk to him on a very regular basis. So starting in February of 2009, Keenan was getting scans every 6 months. And for those of you that are going through this, we know exactly what you're going through when you're living from scan to scan, and that's not much of a life. You have a scan, you're clear, everything is happy. For about 3 months, everything is just rosy, and then you start thinking about that next scan. So for the next 3 months, you're going through the dread. You get the good news, and then it starts all over again. So I identify with a lot of you that are having to go through this, every 6 months or once a year, et cetera. Keenan then, in 2011, she had a checkup with Dr. Jablon down in Charleston, and he was the one who initially identified her cancer. And then in March, she had a CT scan. Keenan used to keep a little running total. Every time she would beat cancer, she'd have a little story, Keenan something and cancer 0. So she had a big running total there. But then in March of 2009, Dr. Jablon called and said that they had found a spot on her liver. And then you can see the story as it goes there, that it had spread to her liver. So we started the treks to Philadelphia at that point. I lost count, but I think it was a total of 22 trips to Philadelphia, either for checkups or some type of treatment. So Dr. Sato, Dr. G, and other people were just absolutely wonderful in Keenan's treatment. But as she said, she was like Rocky. She was ready for the fight. I can honestly say that I had some of the best times of my life with Keenan, because a lot of these trips I went on with her up there. So to be able to have one-on-one time was just fabulous. I want to now introduce you to a young lady named Meredith Legg. Meredith was from Huntersville as well. Interesting story. She moved to Huntersville when she was in high school, and Sue was actually the guidance counselor that registered their family when they came to the high school there. Meredith was 24 years old when her cancer metastasized. She was 22 years old when she was diagnosed with ocular melanoma. So Keenan and Meredith went to the same high school, living in the same town, both young females, again, just off the charts. And so they were going to Philadelphia at the same time to see Dr. Sato and Dr. G. Here's a picture of Keenan and Meredith, and there's the fellow on the right is from South Carolina. He was battling ocular melanoma at the same time. Keenan and Meredith had a lot in common. Again, very young people that were battling ocular melanoma, and you know the stories for that. They fell into a very small population. But here's the weirdest part about this. They were both diagnosed in 2009 within 2 months of each other. Both went to the same high school. And her dad and I were fraternity brothers at UNC Chapel Hill in 1976. After graduation, he went to West Virginia, went back home. I went to different parts of North Carolina. And then we reunited again back in 2009 when they moved to Huntersville. So one of our first thoughts were, hey, were we exposed to something in school? Was there, lead paint in the fraternity house? Don't take this too seriously, but did he and I smoke some bad pot back in 1976? And we transferred this down. I don't know, but when sorry, Lee, don't print that. But when two young people get cancer, which is off the charts, and the dads knew each other, 30 years before that, your mind starts playing tricks on you about these types of things. It was good and bad. It was good that they had each other, that they could bond and network and share their experiences. And Keenan felt that Meredith was really the only person in the world that she could go to and identify with what was going on at that particular point in time. Meredith got married. Keenan was married, so here are their wedding pictures that were there. And then about a year or two later, another young lady, Summer Heath, was diagnosed with ocular melanoma. Summer graduated from Hopewell High School. So again, Keenan, Meredith, Summer, same high school. Summer was 19 years of age when she was diagnosed. We've come to know her extremely well. Beautiful young lady. So she was diagnosed with OEM in 2013. Summer's cancer metastasized this past December. So she had been 5 years, clear scans, had her scan in December. So now she's going to Duke weekly for her treatments. So she's in for the battle of her life right now, to say the least. This is a picture taken several years ago. That's Meredith on the left, and then there's Summer on the right. Keenan and Summer never had a chance to meet each other because they were just at high school at different times, and Keenan was living in Charleston, etc. So they never met, but they knew each other in spirit, and they knew each other's stories very well. So there's Keenan on the left, and there's Summer on the right. Picture of Keenan and her beloved rabbit when she was in one of her treatments that she was having in Philadelphia. Then in between her treatments, Keenan and Billy traveled the world, to say the least. You know, there's a famous line, you probably all have seen the movie, The Shawshank Redemption, and you look at Red and Andy Dufresne, they were sitting out there in the courtyard, and Andy was talking about being in prison for the rest of his life and all, and he said, you got two choices, either you can get busy living or get busy dying. And Keenan made the comment that she was going to get busy living. So for the next couple of years, she and Billy just traveled the world. And there's some zany little pictures of them together and the things they did and the places they went. But they actually traveled the world. They went to South America. They went to Canada. They went all over the United States. You know, and I think deep down, Keenan may have known that her days were limited, so they made the best of that time. Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation there. You want to take over now? Okay. Right.
I probably should have gone first. He's a hard act to follow. So I'm Keenan's mom, Sue, and as Keenan was doing her travels, we have two children. So we had Keenan and we have Pete, the younger brother, and Pete always idolized Keenan. And here's a picture of Pete following Keenan and the places she visited. And he's such a thoughtful young man, and did this picture trying to copy again a picture that we have of Keenan and Billy. This is a Biltmore estate in Asheville. This we're very proud of, Ashley. We're diehard Carolina fans. Kenny, of course, attended, and this is a picture of Keenan with Roy Williams. And she had the opportunity to meet Roy at a function through Kenny's work, and Roy was really touched by Keenan's story, and he honored her at his annual cancer fundraiser, and this took place a year before she passed away. To show you what a stand-up coach he is, he sent flowers to her service and even called her a couple of days before she passed away. This is a picture of Keenan and Billy, April 2014, and this was the Queen's Cup. And you can see a change in her physical appearance here. This is a family photo. This is May 24th, 2014. Keenan requested a day at the beach. And this is Keenan with her father, her husband, and her brother. And this was 4 days before. And on May 25th, 2014, Keenan was supposed to host an engagement party at their home for a good friend of theirs. She had to pass that baton away and couldn't be the host, but she attended an engagement party. And we learned at that party that she did a few Jell-O shots. Everybody has their own type of pain medication. And this was the last picture that I was able to take with my sweet girl. Keenan passed away May 28, 2014. So we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. And this is our beautiful girl. She was only 28 years old when she passed away. And then this amazing team of doctors, and we're so thankful that you're all here and fighting for our cause. And this is a picture of Dr. Maruthanjaya from Duke, Dr. Sato, who means the world to our family. Sweet Dr. Orloff and the fabulous work that she's doing every day. And then I cannot leave out Dr. Gonzalez. She didn't make the picture together with them, but holds a special place in our heart for their life's work and what they do. A cancer cluster of OM in our town. This is from my teenage years in the 70s. I'm a bit of a rebel. Don't let this sweet exterior fool you. It's a cancer cluster. Huntersville, North Carolina. Sorry, Dr. Orloff. July 2014, through social media, we had, of course, learned about Summer. I found out about the connection with Summer as my dental hygienist was cleaning my teeth. Then we learned about Vicki and Courtney, and these were the original 5 girls, and this was the first interview that they were able to do with WSOC, and a lot of you met Allison yesterday, who 5 years later is still carrying our story. This is February 2015. This is the original group of 7, and Joe and Cindy, his wife, are here with us from Huntersville, and Sue Hunt was here yesterday. Crystal is here representing Huntersville. Summer wasn't able to attend, but we're happy that they're here joining our group today. We discovered each other through social media. And this is our Jessica, and she was diagnosed in November 2017. July 2016, Senator Jeff Tart secured a $100,000 grant to use for an ocular melanoma study in Huntersville, North Carolina. And we wanted to also thank our new North Carolina State Senator, Natasha Marcus, for introducing a bill to give another $100,000 to the town of Huntersville to aid in finding a cause for the ocular melanoma cancer cluster in our area. So we feel very well supported. At this point in talking about support, hopefully you've had the opportunity to meet Lee Sullivan, who's sitting here at this front table. And Lee has followed our story from the beginning. He knows all the patients well and the families, and he knows more about ocular melanoma than I do. I've never met a more caring person who has educated himself on our disease. This is Senator Vicki Sawyer, and she was filing the bill that Dr. Brennan talked about to name and study cancer clusters in North Carolina. And this took place March 2019. Copy of the bill, 297. And again, through social media, we found Auburn, Alabama, and their cancer cluster. And together we fight a cause of ocular melanoma. We're looking for a cause to find a cure, OM. And there's our lovely group in Auburn with Dr. Orloff, Dr. Brennan, Dr. Castles, Dr. Sato, just do amazing things for us. And this is our team OM and Dr. Sato with a picture of our beautiful girl. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. Sorry. I think I'm just really moved by the generosity of spirit that's represented by this panel. And of course, the Colberts and Keenan's story, but really all of you have, just thank you for the generosity and sharing your stories. And, I think each of you has taken a different path to be where you are today, and each of you is playing a different role, as I mentioned at the beginning. And I think each of you touched on this a little bit, but I wonder, maybe we could start with the patient and family side and come back to the medical side, but I wonder if you could maybe speak a little more directly to what it's like to be thrust into this role that you don't want to begin with, and then have sort of the public component put on it, and maybe, Ashley, I think you spoke a little bit to that and how it's grown, but just what that's been like, and how do you balance, how do you really, and maybe, and a good friend of mine said she stopped using the word balance a long time ago and she used the word juggle. So maybe balance isn't the right word, but how do you juggle the different roles? And how do you juggle the advocacy that you're doing, Mr. and Mrs. Colbert, and living your life and grieving and all of that at the same time? And for you both with your families and fighting the cancer and advocating. And I'm sure there are some days where there's a different juggle than the next, but I wonder if you might speak to that a little bit. And then maybe for the medical professionals, thinking about going into clinical medicine, I imagine that none of you thought that, you'd be in People magazine or kind of advocating on behalf of a group of patients in a way that you are. And so how has that, if it has, how has that changed your kind of perception of your role as a clinician? So maybe each of you could think about that. And of course, up to you how much you want to share, but would love to hear a little bit.
So for me, it was... there's good days and there's bad days. On the bad days, I have people contacting me through social media to ask and to really hard hit, why are you still in that community? Why are you raising 4 children in that community? And really questioning our choices as a family, which is hard to get from strangers. You have to have kind of a tough skin sometimes to deal with some of those comments that people make. And also from very caring people in the community that, for me, who I'm not as active advocating, besides just telling my story, I'm not raising money. I'm not, doing all the work that the Colberts are doing. And so I'm Catholic. I have lots of guilt around that. But I have to make choices, and for my doctors telling me that stress is a huge factor in metastasis, that I need to choose where I put my time and my stress. I had to just develop a nice rain barrier and let the rain of those well-meaning but completely inappropriate comments from strangers roll off of me, and just focus on what is super important to me. So does that answer that question?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jessica.
I think for me, like I shared on Friday night, I find value in having a purpose, and I think that it's not by chance, like I've said, that I am as healthy as I am. 7 years later, after having a Class 2 diagnosis, I feel very fortunate. And there are days that's actually really hard for me. There's actually 51 people in the Auburn Ocular Melanoma group. Only 30 of them are going to be in this study. But, knowing the families as well as I do now, and knowing the people who've passed away and how they're dealing with that, the people who are the 9 people going through the metastasis experience now, I can feel very guilty about feeling as healthy as I do, and I'm sure there's people in this room that understand what I mean by that. But I am very good at juggling things, Sarah, but I will tell you there have been times that my husband would say, your daughter's graduating from high school, and I know that this is important, but you need to pay attention to the fact that she's about to graduate, or your sister's getting married, and I know what you're doing is very important, and I know it's changing the lives of people, but I need you to stop. I need you to put your phone down, because I would get so many messages every day that I didn't want it to distract from my work. I felt very obligated, but for some reason I didn't feel as challenged to put my phone down at night, so I would be on it constantly for hours at night. But I do see it as a gift of being able to be a part of this community. And even though I said, I felt like I was thrust into this role, looking back on it, like I said, the one day when I asked, why is this happening? And I felt very clear, the Lord telling me, it was for such a time as this. I was like, well, if you've called me to do it, you're going to give me the grace to do it. And so I'm just going to, take a step every day in the light that you give me, and hopefully we'll do it well. The challenges have been, like I shared with Sarah, is the criticism that comes with this, and it kind of blows me away that you would think that we would be more supportive of each other. But even within the ocular melanoma community, the criticism that can come is overwhelming, because again, we were asked to do these interviews and we agreed that we would do them, but they happen very fast, and it's not like you get to script what you want to say, and they change your words, and they take out things and put in things and put in scary pictures of the university when we have a lovely place to live. But our People article made it look like it was a very devastating place to live. I mean, just things that you would hope would be different. Even coming to this conference, I had somebody send me a message just a couple of days ago asking me not to share my political or religious views when I came, and just things that you're like, why would people be hurtful that way? And it can be challenging. I'm sure y'all have experienced the same thing. And but with all that, I think there's even a purpose in that. And I've decided just to embrace it and to hopefully. I will tell you that, like, I feel very blessed to have the kind of relationship I have with Dr. Cam, with Dr. Orloff, and Mike Brennan too, that I literally can call them at any time, and the support that I've gotten from them has been significant. I think the university, what a gift we have, honestly, in Fred Cam. And when I tell you I can call him and he will answer me, he will pick up the phone, he'll call me back. I don't care if it's at night, if it's on a Sunday. I've done the same thing with Marlana, done the same thing with Mike, so I feel very fortunate to have the people around me. Sue and Kenny, they're like family. It breaks my heart to see what y'all have been through, but I feel a closeness there that I would not have had I not been in this experience, and because of that, I feel very blessed. So that's just my perspective on this.
I'm the secondary in this relationship. I mentioned this to Sarah, not really thinking it was important, but when you talk about being an advocate or, being involved as we are with Huntersville, it was all due to Kenny. Once Keenan passed away, I just wanted to pull the covers over my head and, deal with grief, try to figure that out. I have a very strong husband who got mad, and he has his own version that he's going to share, but we both have our strengths, and I think they come out when opportunities present themselves. For example, I'm on Facebook. Kenny is not. Can you believe it this day and age? So he's not on Facebook. And so, I have that connection and have met so many wonderful people through that connection. So we all have our strength. With our Huntersville group, Jessica, no apologies are needed. And to be honest with you, I don't feel like that Kenny and I do enough or do what we can. But to Joe and Cindy, we know that what their day-to-day experience are different, and Kenny and I don't have those health issues to deal with. So Kenny's very accessible sometimes when Lee or Allison will call and say, we want to do an update, what's happening, what's new, and he's very good at it. He's got that skill. So, but with all of this, and perhaps I owe you an apology for the PowerPoint, but I've talked about Keenan before and given you our story, but when I was asked to create this PowerPoint, I wanted to do something a little different this time, and it speaks to who you are as a group. I felt safe to really tell her story, from a perspective that a church group would not understand or maybe want to hear. So for that safety, I appreciate your allowing us to do that today.
It's kind of tough doing these things because it brings up Keenan all the time. It makes it fresh in your mind. But as I tell people all the time, we've got 23 cases of ocular melanoma in Huntersville. Who's to say that we won't have another 23 cases in another couple of years? And that's just very, very scary. So we've kind of taken it upon ourselves. We need to bring this to the forefront And I commend people like Lee and Allison Lattis, who was here yesterday. I told several people years ago, I said, 3 things have to take place for us to make headway in Huntersville. We've got to get some people scared about this. We've got to get some people angry about this. And then the third thing was a little touchy. I said, we've got to embarrass some people about this. Because when this all started in 2014, the state said it was a county issue. The county said it was a school issue because we thought it was the high school. The school said it was a state issue. It was like a dog chasing its tail, and nobody would take any responsibility. And I said, we've got to get some politicians and some elected officials on camera and make a fool out of them to show that they're not doing anything, and something will happen at that point. And due to the power of social media and the mainstream media, that's happened. So I'm really, really excited about what's happened over the past 2 years. But from 2014, 15, and 16, this whole effort just floundered. And it's been since 2016 that it's taken off. But bottom line is we need to do something, and we're going to have another 23 cases out there, short and simple.
So I actually never met Keenan or Meredith. Sorry, I don't know why this is so hard. So I was still a fellow in 2014, not even realizing that ocular melanoma was going to become my career. I actually thought I wanted to do lymphoma and bone marrow transplant. And so I wasn't really hanging out with Dr. Sato and Dr. Gonzalez and Dr. Ashleman at the time. It was really probably that fall of 2014, so after both Keenan and Meredith had passed, that I really joined the team and started attending clinic with them and everything like that. And one of the first kind of projects, I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to start working on something. Dr. Sato, what do you want me to start working on? And the first project he gave me was, you need to figure out what's going on in Huntersville, North Carolina. and so, I wish, and one of these days I'll put together a PowerPoint of email exchanges that started really fall of 2014 into 2015, really having absolutely no idea what I was doing. It was around the same time that the Colberts were contacting this guy, Rick Langley, the State Cancer Registry. I was emailing him. At this point, I think we were just kind of, just rapid fire emailing him. At that point, a guy named Randall Williams, who was actually an OBGYN, who had absolutely no idea what ocular melanoma was appointed the state Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services. I really wish I could go back and look at my Google searches also around that time, because again, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and the body of epidemiology literature in ocular melanoma is actually fairly narrow, but I was Googling things like what could be in mascara that could cause this. I was Googling, the most bizarre things, just trying to figure out how to approach this. And it was really kind of through 2015, and then actually that 2016, I actually submitted an abstract to our to our big cancer conference, something called ASCO, which is where I really just briefly just commented on our observations of, at that time, for the 5 cases in Huntersville, and really only knew of the original 3 in Auburn. And even just putting that together and trying to reach out to some epidemiologists to kind of get their support, nobody wanted to touch it. They were like, this doesn't really make sense. You went to the state cancer registries. They said this wasn't a cluster. Scientifically, you have nothing here. And so for me, it has been extremely difficult because, and I know this is being videotaped, yes, while this has never met the statistical significance of a cluster and that met the scientific standards of what's required to move forward in there, we've always known that something's going on. and so I've really, it's been a struggle for me because I've had to juggle kind of what the scientific community has said, okay, what the standards are for us to really care about this and really attack it head on, and what we know to be true.
Dr. Orloff, sorry, could I just,
Yeah.
would you mind just, and we're almost out of time, I know.
Yeah.
Would you mind just talking about, because we've talked a lot about, like, is this a cluster, is it not? Could you just talk about the implications of something being a cluster or not? Like, why does that matter?
So it matters because once the state kind of originally does their assessment, if they find it to be a cancer cluster, the onus is really on them to further investigate. So they have a method in which they figure it out. So, but once they do the original kind of what I described yesterday as being the calculations of the standard incidence ratios, if it doesn't meet, then they're kind of done. You know, they don't have to put any money towards it. They don't need to do subsequent environmental testing. You know, they did do a subsequent survey for us, but I mean, the survey was not adequate for what we knew to be happening. And so it was all really uncharted territory and completely unprecedented. And we've kind of had to really just put our heads together. And then so after Randall Williams, again, who was an OBGYN, who had really no idea what was going on, you know, appointed this guy, you know, who, and I said, he's retired, you know, eye doctor, does he really want to be bothered with this? And, you know, it's really just been amazing, you know, the community kind of coming together and kind of getting to the point where we are. That said, it's been 3-4 years now, and you know, and I struggle with, you know, this should be moving faster. You know, we should have figured something out by now. And when you have all the eyes on you, you know, again, I think social media has been great. You know, mainstream media has been great in keeping everything, you know, to the forefront of people's minds. People just want to know what the answers are. I mean, so, and again, kind of going back, you know, juggling, you know, in the scientific community, you know, you are encouraged to publish in scientific journals. And I've caught a lot of criticism, you know, that this hasn't really been officially published, you know, in a scientific journal, but, you know, it's in the news and People magazine and different things like that. And it's interesting because, you know, for me, it almost doesn't matter. You know, I mean, yes, I mean, the scientific community knows about it now, and they've recognized it, and we have the support of them, and it's great. And you know, we had a great meeting yesterday and talking about where we're moving forward with, you know, the sequencing of tumors and things like that. But the story's out there. Like, people know what's going on. I mean, at some point, it's like, I don't care where this is published or whatever, you know. And I always say, too, that, you know, we may not find anything. You know, there's a large chance that we're not going to find anything. This stuff is hard to investigate. You know, what people say is, okay, well, why can't you just, you know, find the smoking gun? I was like, we don't even know what the gun looks like. We don't even know if it's a gun. Like, you know, because we don't know what causes this, it's very, very hard to work through this. And so, but at the end of the day, if just one person who didn't know about ocular melanoma found out about it, maybe we're having symptoms, maybe went to the doctor and were diagnosed sooner, you know, then we did our job. And so I go back to that. But so it's been a challenge. And again, kind of going back, I never, ever thought that this is where my career would have gone. But it's been amazing. And I think one of the hard parts for me, too, and I think one of the reasons why, you know, this is so emotional is, you know, it's one thing, you see patients in the office and you're talking to them about their disease and you prescribe treatments, and very, very, very close relationships can be made there. But when you start working on something like this, you know, when you've gone to the patients' homes and things like that, you know, you develop friendships and that are just beyond, and you feel even more pressure to move the field forward, and not just from let's figure out what's causing these, you know, in these unique geographic accumulations, but we need treatments, we need a cure, you know. So even though I haven't met Meredith and Keenan, you know, going through this, I am constantly reminded, you know, when I'm having a hard day and, you know, I've got 17, 20 patients in clinic and I still have to go around, it's their memory, you know, it's this, you know, that really keeps us going. And Dr. Sato says that all the time. He's like, I promised their parents, you know, we have to figure this out. We need a cure. And so it's what keeps us going. So to all of you, and to all of you, thank you, because I think our job really wouldn't be what it is without you. So thank you.
And I think we're just about out of time, so I apologize that we're not gonna, I think, open this up for general questions, but I think what I'm gonna do is ask Dr. Cam and Dr. Brennan for kind of any last closing thoughts. I've asked you to sort of think about this, so I don't wanna cut you off, and maybe after we hear your thoughts, we'll sort of close the open panel, but if the panelists don't mind, maybe anyone who has questions or follow-up thoughts could come up during the break before the next session. Dr. Cam and Dr. Brennan?
So my thoughts are the following. I feel for everyone in this room in more ways than one. I think that for us to, I know what my role is, and that my role is to take what this unique accumulation, whatever we want to call it, at Auburn, to use that as an opportunity to advance the knowledge and the science with this rare cancer. That's the first thing. But it's going to take more than a Fred Cam or Marlana Orloff or anyone here. It's going to take very willing patients and caregivers. It's going to take that when you're called upon by the QOM or other people to talk with politicians, industry, pharmaceuticals, when they're asking for that, it's going to take that as part of it. It's going to take passionate scientists who are working in the labs, who are figuring out the molecular biology, developing possible other treatment options. It's going to take passionate clinicians like Marlana and Miguel and Rick and others who are there literally on the front lines doing what they're doing. And it's going to take financial resources. So at the end of the day, you know, I highly encourage that everyone in this room pledge to advocate and make it happen so we keep moving forward constantly in an effort to find causes, cures, treatments, whatever it takes. That's what it's going to take.
I feel honored because I spent quite a few years as an ophthalmologist, a surgical ophthalmologist, and all my patients were happy. They died of old age, really old age. And I did cataract surgery, and everything went well. And I said, I think I need another challenge to start getting a little more sensitive and to realize that all of medicine isn't as rosy as cataract surgery. So I feel privileged to be part of the family.
Well, I just want to reiterate, just thank you all for everything that each of you is doing in your own way. And thank you for your generosity of spirit and sharing with us today and in all the ways that you are. And I think we're just, to reiterate what I think each of you has said, we're all part of this community that we wouldn't have chosen to be a part of. And thank goodness we're all here in it together, and we'll keep moving forward. So thank you all.